Hello everyone. We have a Road to 2100 chess.com rapid game against R. Kurth. We have the black pieces. We had a 91%. He had an 85%. He didn't even make a single mistake, as you can see from this right here. And we made one mistake. At the end, though, he made one blunder, which is through the game. That's why the graph is super even. He played very well. He made it very difficult for me. And it's our beloved Philidor. So let's go through the game. We play d6 just so we can develop our knight without it getting kicked. Development and center. And now we establish our pawn presence and challenge his pawn duel on move 3. I like this because it offers to go down the queen trade line, which a lot of players will automatically do. This guy was rated 2030 something, and even though he's such a strong player, there's no reason for him to study this line because it's some vague sideline and a sideline. So he takes, which you can do. It's not automatically losing, but it goes down the queen trade line, which I am familiar with. Now maybe he's also familiar with it, I have no idea. But I should be more familiar with it since I play it more than he does, because black rarely plays the Philidor, so he doesn't see it a lot, but I see it in a lot of my games. So he trades queens. I have to take back. He develops his bishop, pinning my knight, maybe getting ready to add pressure. I develop my bishop towards the center, controlling this square. No problem. He castles long, giving me a check in the process. I develop my piece, defend my center, and block the check. As you can see, we're still in theory. The book icon tells you that. These are book moves. He plays his knight out, and this attacks the center. What does this mean? It means that my knight is pinned by the rook, and he's threatening to win the pawn. So I have to move my king out of the way, so my knight is unpinned and I'm not hanging anything. Fine. He goes king b1 as just a safe, a safe, solid move when you castle long. He's also protecting this pawn, which is important in the queen trade line because oftentimes I can take that in different lines. So it's actually a good move, and I want you to ignore the inaccuracy symbols, the yellow ones right here by the computer. We're going to focus on mistakes and blunders. So this is definitely a solid move. He's just getting to safety. So you can't leave your king here because your rook needs to get out. So in the queen trade line, as you've seen many times, the standard operation is c6, king c7. So we go c6, making a home for our king. He just develops a bishop. Sure, it's kind of passive, but he doesn't have a choice. You can't develop it here, right? So what are you going to do? So it's our turn. I just lift my king, get it to safety, give some space for the rook, nothing crazy. Where are these highlights from? Are these highlights from the game? Anyway, he moves his rook towards the center and over defends his central pawn. I now notice that this pawn is very well defended, so in my mind, I'm not even thinking of targeting it. Like sometimes you can pressure it, you can get two knights here, maybe your bishop's here, try to win it, but that's not my focus because I know it's too well defended. So my focus, oftentimes you can attack this pawn with like a bishop out here and a knight, like a fried liver style. So there's this target, maybe this, maybe the knight, you can double the pawn structure. So I'm thinking of these ideas, and I go for bishop development. You could put it here and be kind of solid with it, defending your center to free this knight to go on excursions. That's an idea. You can go c4, immediately pressuring this pawn, again with the follow-up of fried liver. That's an idea. Or you can go here, and he definitely doesn't want to ruin his structure, so you might be able to force bishop back, which he doesn't want to do because it blocks his rook and he has to go backwards. So I throw it in because I feel like it's going to give him practical problems, because how do you respond to this? You kind of feel like you have to go back. So he goes back because you have to. And now, even without the bishop, I just put my knight here just to see how he responds. I want to see if he's going to get tangled up, or maybe if he defends like this and I can take the bishop. I calculate that if he defends properly, I will have to put my knight back, but the moves he makes in the meantime are not particularly helpful for him. So I attack the pawn. He lifts the rook and defends it. Now you may think maybe this move helps him, but it kind of gets in the way of his bishop, his knight retreat. It's kind of tangled. So it's weird for white. His development's awkward. Um, it's not super awkward, but it's awkward. You may think mine's awkward actually now that I mention it, but it's funny because white's the one who's trying to solve the problems that I'm posing, not vice versa. So I'd rather be black. So I don't want to take the knight and give him the bishop pair like that for no reason. I did this just to lure the bishop back. Now, in a lot of other of the Philidor lines, this bishop is maybe on this diagonal or somewhere else, and then I would take the knight and ruin the structure. But here, I don't even want to bother, and I also don't want him having this alignment. So now that I've provoked the backwards move, I now move my bishop and try to improve it for free by hitting this pawn twice. There's only so many ways you can defend it. So if you defend it with the bishop here, I'll take it with the knight. So if he defends it with the rook, that's super lame. So he chooses to defend it backwards with the bishop, which makes some sense because it's out of the way of all the other pieces. The drawback is it's clearly not a threat to my position, right? It's purely a defensive piece. I don't have to worry about anything. But now in my head, I know my knight is going to be kicked back because I'm done adding pressure. And after my knight moves, he'll have this potential thing hitting my light square bishop. And the light square bishop is very important in this queen trade line. I only really want to ever trade my light square bishop if I have to for his light square bishop, but not for his knight. So I think prophylactically and I play h6 with the knowledge that he's going to kick me next and I'll go back and he will not have knight g5 ideas. Fine. And you want to say, well, what was the point of all that? Well, my bishop ended up from g5 to, b4 to c5, and his bishop went from here back to here. So I basically got my bishop to a nice square, and I forced his bishop to a bad square. Now, it took a lot of moves, but that's the end result of all this. Also, I think I forced his rook to a more awkward location. Okay, it's fine. You can kind of double and try to reharmonize your position. Maybe bishop back, everything's out of the way. But still, you're not posing me any problems, that's for sure. So it's his turn. He finally says, you know what? I'm going to hunt this bishop. Maybe you could go back and try to open up the file, but I don't want to give him this bishop for no reason. And I want, since his king's here, in the queen trade line of the Philidor, we often push the pawns on the side where his king is. Even though there's no queens, we still like to attack it. So because his knight's here, that gives me a free future b5. So I definitely didn't want to trade. So I just dropped my bishop back because now I know his knight is misplaced and I can get a free move. It's still it's an even game and anyone can win. But I like black's position. It looks more harmonious and I know the ideas. Oh, this is best. That's interesting. So he plays b3. Okay, yeah, he plays b3 because he wants to give space for his knight. It also blunts this. Interesting. I wasn't sure it was best when he played it, though. Okay, and now I get in the free move b5. I should have started with a5, but I started with b5. The tiny, tiny difference, and I played a5 next move, but the tiny difference is you give him this one turn to throw in this check, which is annoying, which a5 would have prevented by controlling the square. It's not the end of the world, but there's no reason to allow him to do that and complicate things for you. If you start with a5, he can't do that. Next move, you can go b5. Well, we kick the knight, and he doesn't even think. He doesn't even look around the board. He spends 2 seconds or 1 second and instantly retreats it. So he didn't even give himself time to look for a better move. right? He instantly retreats the knight, and now I notice this because I was just too eager to hit the knight for free. So I kind of made the same mistake as him, as not looking around the board. And then I played a5, which is kind of the only move to maintain advantage because you really don't want him blockading you like this, because then it's going to take you time to, try to flush out that bishop, and you just didn't have to do that. So we play a5 now, and I'm like, phew, nice. Again, it's not like it's better for him or anything, but you don't want to allow that stuff. That's how you slowly start to lose a game, by allowing things like that. So I'm happy now with my position. I think, I'm doing well. I'd much rather be black because the plans are easy. I can try to open up his king side. I have these beautiful pieces. He can't break down my center, and his are like lacking of purpose. He can try to play down here, but everything's covered, and that's why the queen trade line is so annoying for white and practically good for black. So he finds the best move, which I guess it makes sense, to try to break everything open and give these two pieces some space, some life, since his knight's dominated. I mean, this guy played really well. Like, I don't even know if I would have played c4 here as white, like if I would have found it. But he plays it, and the good thing about this for him is we're clearly trying to open up files towards his king. I want to go rook b8 and attack him. But by him going c4, we don't want to take and bring his pieces into the game. So it kind of, and we definitely can't let him take, not only because we hang a pawn, but then our king is open to his rook, which is devastating. So he kind of forces us to push past. Now I like this because we gain a bunch of space and we blockade his pieces. They look really bad. I don't like it because it's much harder now to open up files if I'm not going to sacrifice stuff. However, I'd much rather have black's position. He goes back trying to control this break, because if he didn't go back, he might have been worried about me pushing. He takes with the knight. I sacrifice my rook, ruining his pawn structure, right? So now he would have 3 isolated, and then I bring my other rook over, hitting that pawn. He probably didn't want to deal with stuff like that, so he's over defending the square so that any sacrifice is almost taken care of ahead of time. Okay. So I'm trying to figure out what to do. I know now that because he has the bishop and the knight, I mean, this isn't really a thing anytime soon, because I would just be hanging the pawn. So I kind of have to shift gears and just maintain positional control and kind of try to put him in zigzag. So this is my one mistake of the game. So the engine likes everything I did in the game except for this move, because I had this opportunity, and I was thinking of this move all along. I was thinking of it, let me go back, like when his bishop was here, I don't know exactly on which turn, but I'm always looking at different ideas. Can I push on the queen side? Can I jump my knight here? Can I move my bishop? Another thing I was looking at was knight h5 into knight f4, hitting the rook, hitting the bishop, hitting the pawn. And it looked really strong to me. And I'm like, is there any type of defense he can use? I'm like, and I was looking, I'm like, what would I do if I was white? And I thought, maybe if I go here and he doubles, and then maybe if I go here and he retreats, protecting, I almost kind of harmonized his position for him, right? It almost gets super like good looking all of a sudden. He's still super passive with no plans, but everything's out of each other's way. Everything's kind of lined up nicely. And then I didn't want to do it anymore. So now later on in the game, as soon as he takes his bishop off this diagonal, he loses the resource to go here, which is a detail. So instead of going rook b8, the engine keeps suggesting either knight h5 or g5 knight h5, and just sticking it in there. Because rook b8, although it is a motif, the fact is we're not really going to break, so this isn't going to be open soon. But my plan was to put it here, and although it's not going to happen soon, it will happen eventually, because I'm going to force it through one way or another. I'm going to force trades, and I'm going to defend this pawn with my bishop. I'm going to put my knight here, and I am going to force this through at some point. So I just put my rook here. Engine says I had a little better idea, and I agree. So he goes back, And the engine doesn't like this because your knight has nowhere to go. You're blocking your bishop, you're blocking your rook, you're blocking your other rook. It's the most discoordinating move you can make in the position. However, it's not like it hangs a piece or anything. And when he made this move, I was like, when he made it, even though the engine says it's a miss, I was like, oh shoot, he's preparing f4, right? So even though the engine's not afraid, a human's like, oh wait, he's going to try to collapse my center now because he has nowhere to play. So I was like, I got to find a good move. Although I did think it was a bad knight. The knight itself was bad. But the f4 plan might be something to do because, he needs something active to try to do in the position. So I'm like, okay, he's going to go f4. But what's the drawback of his move? He's undefending these squares. And I was looking for that moment because this knight, this whole time, and oftentimes in the Philidor queen trade, is tied down to the defense of this pawn, if the bishop isn't. So I can't move this knight as long as this pawn's being pressured. But the second he moves away, I said, what's the drawback? I highlighted the squares. Oh, he's not pressuring my pawn. I can move my knight finally. Boom. I instantly put it to c5, and I was very happy about this because now that this knight's gone, I can literally reroute my knights to the queen side and flood all my pieces in there and try to force the opening of the position. And my rooks are optimally placed for that. So this is my plan. I was very happy to see this. I think he should have maintained the pressure on the pawn. And then he goes f3, not f4, and I was happy because I'm like, oh, this isn't critical. He's defending a pawn that was defended. I couldn't take it. This isn't a thing. I'm never going to take this when you have so many pieces. I guess he was just over defending it, but f4 would have been a more annoying move to face. In any case, he's defending his center and opening this bishop, so it makes sense, right? But I was happy. I was like, phew. Oh, he played like a, passive lame move. That's not critical. I don't have to worry about it. Now I see my chance to reroute this guy because he has nowhere to go other than that idea, which you could also try. But I really like the idea of playing over here. Well, really these. And even more so just these, just two files. But anyway, I wanted to do this, and that way, if he ever pressures my pawn, I just have this simple f6, and both of my knights are free to go. And I even have this weird maneuver in the future. So I'm really happy with my position, even though I know it's going to take time to, unwind and express its full power. So he develops his bishop, tries to get it in the game, and hits the pawn. I make the automatic f6. Engine wants some weird line, don't even worry about it. That's why I'm saying ignore the inaccuracies. The engine always, I looked at some of them and they have these weirdest lines, and it's like, no one plays like that. So f6, never have to worry about the pawn again. My pieces are all free, finally. Move 24. With the extra bishop support, he finally goes f4, and now I'm like, oh shoot. My king is here. I have a rook here. I guess another reason you don't want your rook there. I didn't even think of that, but yeah, it does come into play. So when he made this, I started getting a little worried. I'm like, oh shoot, what do I do? Not because it's winning or anything, but I didn't like the idea of him trying to open this up, and then if I didn't have a good response, I really didn't like it. So I was looking, I'm like, do I have a good response? If he takes me, and I take, and he takes, and I take, okay, there's two open files, but at least the bishops kind of just block all entry. So it shouldn't be dangerous down any line. I figure if he pushes, I'm super happy because he loses all counterplay. I just drop back and have a free attack over here. So if he pushes, I'm super happy. If he takes, I mean, I'm not thrilled, but I don't really have a choice. I just have to take back with something. But then I notice it is my turn. So I might as well support the point, cover my king, cover the diagonal, and put an extra guy on this. So if he does take, maybe we can trade some stuff and I won't open up a new file. I won't have an isolated pawn because I'll have a piece here. And ideally, if I can get rid of this f-pawn, this is an outpost. So if I can get a knight here, that would be a great knight, along with the knight. If I can get a knight on c5 and e5, that's kind of like positional domination. So that's why I put my bishop here, more support. And then he goes knight here. And I was even more worried when he did this. This was his one. Oh no, this wasn't his blunder. I mean, it's a blunder, but it's. Wait, okay, so at the end of the game, it doesn't even say his last move is an inaccuracy when he resigned. I thought it was a blunder. We'll get to that. Okay, so this is his one blunder, which is super confusing. When he made it, I thought this was the most critical point in the game for me, where I was like, I got to figure this out because I don't want to throw the game here. So when he made this, I was like, this is annoying because he adds another attacker, and I can't add another piece. I can't add my knight. I can't add my rook, which would have been great. Like if my bishop was here to add that piece, that would have really cemented it and relieved me of my troubles. And so I couldn't find a good move, because now if he takes, and let's say I take with the knight, he takes with the knight, I take with the bishop, he takes with the bishop, I take with the pawn. Now I traded a bunch of stuff. I don't even have both my bishops. I have two open files. He's finally breaking it open. It's annoying. But then I noticed this pawn's actually hanging. Can I take it? But then I was scared because I thought if I take this pawn, he's going to take my bishop with the rook. I have to take with the king. And then I was looking at two different moves for him. One, just pushing this pawn with check to open up his pieces. But the scarier one was takes, 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 bishop takes check, pinning my, skewering my king and rook. I have to put a piece here, so I'll just show you. I take, he takes, which is the best move apparently. I take, and I was worried about if I take this, now I have to interpose a piece, but he could trade stuff, and when I take, oh no, he was supposed to throw in a rook. I was worried about him throwing in this rook somewhere like here, and then when I go back, then take. And now he has this piece here, threats, things are open. Okay, black is better, but I mean, I didn't want to allow this because I feel like I lost a lot of my control of the position. So that's what I was worried about. And then I came to the conclusion that if he takes my bishop with his rook, I'm not going to take the rook. I'm just going to take the bishop and remain up my pawn. And in that way, he can't take anything because everything's defended. His rook is hit. He has to retreat or double. But even if he doubles, everything is defended. His rooks have absolutely nothing to do here. Like there's just no entry points, nothing to do. And his rooks can't attack this extra pawn of mine. So that's why I said, okay, I can take the pawn. Let me take it. I wasn't sure which one was better, taking the rook or the bishop, but I evaluated taking the bishop as better and less risky. Engine agrees. So I was super shocked when he just moved his bishop back. I was fully expecting a rook sack or some type of what was the other move I was expecting? A push, but I don't know if it was here when I was expecting it, or if he takes the bishop first. In any case, I was not expecting him to just let me take the pawn. So as soon as he did this and just like gave it to me, I'm like, oh, that's a mistake. I have a win condition now. And so at this point, I'm like, he just made a huge mistake. I have to be a lot better. Even though it might be a little tricky, I didn't want him to push this pawn under any cases, because even as a pawn sack, it opens up his bishop and maybe the rook. So right here, my first instinct was like, ooh, b5, defending. But then I'm like, he can always push this as a kamikaze. So instead, let me improve a piece, remove the other thing I was afraid of. So I'm afraid of the pawn push and I'm afraid of the rook sack. So I said, let me get rid of both of them by putting my bishop here. No more. And now if he takes the knight, okay, I don't get the beautiful knight outpost, but I do get a beautiful pawn structure. So he decides not to take, which I understand because this is a nice pawn structure, but that pawn would take away, it would fill the hole, and the knight wouldn't be able to use it. So it does have positional advantages in its own way. He just doubles, which, like I said, there's no entry points, so that's super annoying for white. And now I play b5, knowing that now if he takes my bishop, I don't have to take with the pawn. I could take with the knight because it's protected. So I really like my position here. Now I'm feeling really good. And it's confirmed by the engine here. Plus 2.4 is completely winning. I'm only up a pawn, but it's a positional bind. He hops his knight in the center, and here I was really deliberating. Should I take it? Should I just try to improve my position? Because I don't know exactly what the knight's doing. It doesn't look like it has much to do. But then I said, you know what? That's the only piece of his that is even hopping around the board, potentially can do anything. This knight's trash. This bishop's trash. This bishop's kind of dumb right now. The rooks don't have any real entry. This is the only piece that he's banking on doing anything. Let me just take it. So I get rid of the piece he has to take. One of the benefits of my move is I clearance the square. So boom. Now I hop my knight in and I get the double knight. And so my knights are better than his bishops. So in closed positions, especially when you have outposts, and especially when their bishops have no range, your knights can be better. So in this case, they are. So he goes FG3, and this is what I thought his blunder was. I don't know how the engine says this is not a blunder. So the second he made this, I'm like, oh man, like the first millisecond, like as soon as this hits the board, my brain goes, oh man, this guy's really trying to like break things down. He's so annoying. Okay, fine. What's the drawback of the move? Oh, it undefends the pawn. I noticed I could take it. But then I said, wait, what's the drawback? This square, this square. And only then did I see the fork. You know, sometimes when someone makes a move, your eyes just see, oh, fork. That's not what happened here. I had to actually ask myself out loud, what's the drawback? And I highlighted the squares, and then I saw, oh, the knight can touch this one. And that's how I found the fork in this specific case. So I played the fork, and he resigned. But how is it not a blunder? What's his best response? Rook 4 to d2. Okay, so to hang the rook. We take the exchange, he takes back, rook d8. So I just don't see how that's not a blunder. He just lost an exchange, and they say inaccuracy. I guess his position was so bad, they're saying it doesn't even matter, that knight was so strong that a rook wasn't worth much more than it anyway. Wow, that's crazy. Anyway, another showing for the Philidor queen trade line. Although it may look complex and technical, its ideas are actually quickly grasped and can be explained in a pretty short period of time and without memorizing lines, which is the nice part. So if you're interested, you can contact me on Discord. Good luck in your chess, and goodbye.